Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of People of Distinction, the talk that gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, peopleofdistinction.org for more info, or you can always email me directly at benji@alcoleenterprises.com. And on the line with us today, we have Fran Caffey Sandin. We're going to be discussing her amazing book, Touching the Clouds, True Stories to Strengthen Your Faith. Now, it's available for purchase through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, pretty much any online book reseller. But people, if you want to gather everything that Fran has in store, do yourself a favor and head directly to her personal site. And that's fransandin.com. There you'll find more information on Fran herself, more information on this fantastic narrative. But get this, Fran has 2 other books that she's written that you're going to want to get your hands on as well. One is called See You Later, Jeffrey, followed by Hope on the Way, Devotions to Go. All 3 of which, again, are available for purchase through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and again, pretty much any online reseller. But you're going to find hyperlinks set up to take you to the purchasing pages through her personal site, fransandin.com. Head on over there today. It's a one-stop shop for everything that she has in store. And before we go any further, I do want to take this opportunity and point out that Fran was brought to our network, People of Distinction, today by one of the best advertising firms in the business. And people, you already know, I'm talking about Citi of Books. So listen to me. If you're a writer out there, you've written your masterpiece, you've put in the time and the work, and now you find yourself at a crossroads because, well, now you need help moving the book you just wrote. Well, I'm going to give you some fantastic advice. You already know you got to contact Citi of Books. People, this is what they specialize in. Head on over to cityofbooks.com today. Gather all of the ways that they're going to maximize your creative endeavors. And listen, it is an absolute pleasure to have Fran here on the line. She's the expert. She's done the research. She's done the interviews. She's going to be able to articulate everything much better than I ever could. Do me a favor, though. Sit back and strap in because this is going to be a wonderful ride. And by the time we've concluded, you're going to run to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, fransandin.com, and purchase your copies because you're going to understand how valuable this book truly is. Fran, first and foremost, welcome to People of Distinction, and thank you very much for being a guest. How are you doing today?
Thank you, Benji. Thank you for having me. I've been excited about this today.
Absolutely. Listen, the excitement is felt both ways, okay? Because we're looking forward to this, Fran. We have been, and I think what you've embarked upon here is special. I think what you've embarked upon here is needed, right? And I think it's going to offer so much assistance to a lot of people out there, men and women alike. So thank you for writing the book. Thank you even more for being a guest here with us to discuss it. Now, before we go into the words on those pages, I do think it's important to start off by learning a little bit more about yourself. So let's begin by learning a little bit more about your background.
Well, I grew up in a small East Texas farming community. My dad was an auto mechanic, World War II veteran. My mom was a homemaker, and I have a younger brother and sister. As a high school senior, I won a scholarship that allowed me to attend Texas Women's University to fulfill my lifelong dream of becoming a nurse. While I was at Parkland Hospital in Dallas, a tall, handsome Swedish medical student invited me for coffee, and we went on a date, and then after that we had many more dates. Jim and I fell in love and married shortly after we graduated. After we were married for a year, Jim was sent to South Vietnam at Cam Ranh Bay, where he was an Air Force medical officer at the base hospital. In the meantime, I worked as a nurse in Texas. After Jim returned and completed his Air Force commitment, we moved to Texas, where he began his medical practice. We were eventually blessed with 2 sons and a daughter. Our sons, Jeffrey and Steve, are waiting for us in heaven. Jeffrey died at 17 months, and Steve, a physical therapist, died of complications of cystic fibrosis and kidney failure.
Wow.
Our daughter, Angie, and her husband, Bo, live about an hour away and are parents of our 3 fabulous grandchildren. I worked as a nurse, either full or part-time, for many years, and now I'm retired. Jim and I enjoy traveling. I love to play the piano. I play the organ at our church, and I enjoy reading, walking, flower arranging, baking, and visiting with my family and friends.
Mm-hmm. Fran, thank you very much for sharing that. And listen, it goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway. My sincerest condolences on the passing of your sons. And I know that it actually plays a part here with my next question. So moving along, Fran, tell us how you began as an author.
Well, I came through the back door. Following the death of our son Jeffrey at 17 months, who died suddenly of bacterial meningitis, I was totally devastated. I went to the local Christian bookstore to find a book to help me. Some explained the grieving process, but none answered my specific questions. So I asked the Lord to counsel me with answers. Over time, He did, through His Word and divine encouragers. Then He prompted me to write what I had learned. I was just shocked because I argued with God. I said, but Lord, I'm not a writer. His still small voice responded, I am. But Lord, I don't know how to write a book. Again, I heard in my spirit, I do. So I decided to follow God's leading and called my English teacher friend, Nancy. And she said, come over and I will help you. So I took my zippered notebook, dumped my notes on her kitchen table, and we made an outline. Then I set aside 1 day a week to work on the manuscript. I would write a while and cry a while.
Yeah.
It was a very therapeutic process, but it took me 4 years to complete a manuscript, and then I didn't know what to do next. So I went to the public library and checked out a book on how to submit a manuscript. I began sending it out, not realizing I should research the publishing house guidelines first. Mm-hmm. So after several rewrites and 26 returns, I attended a Christian Writers Conference. And before I left that morning, my devotional reading was from Isaiah 46:11. I have spoken it, said the Lord. I will also bring it to pass. I have purposed it. I will also do it. So on the 27th submission, 11 years after I first began writing, my book, See You Later, Jeffrey, was published by Tyndale House. I can only say, to God be the glory. Yeah. That is how my writing career began. Touching the Clouds, True Stories to Strengthen Your Faith is my second book, and that's the one I'm sharing about today.
And listen, what a great segue that you've established, because let's jump right into that book. Again, you've mentioned it. I'm going to mention it again. Touching the Clouds, True Stories to Strengthen Your Faith. Tell us a little bit more about it.
Well, I began noticing other women who had undergone serious life changes and difficult circumstances. And I realized that each one had a story to tell because they had a strong testimony of God's faithfulness. Mm-hmm. I knew their story would bless others who were struggling in a similar area of life. So I wrote their stories in first person and followed each of the 17 chapters with a faith lifter. 2 stories were my own.
Fran, can you tell us about some of your experiences in writing the book?
It was a very interesting experience because it took quite a bit of time. I interviewed 15 women at different times using a cassette tape recorder as we talked. Then when I got home, I turned on my computer and typed the story while listening to the tape. I used the exact words as told to me. Then after I completed each story, I asked the participant to read it for any additions, deletions, or corrections. Each one was happy for me to use her name because she wanted her testimony to bless others.
Mm-hmm.
As I listened to each account, I identified a specific element of faith that the woman exhibited through her experience. Then I included a faith lifter at the end of the chapter. It has 3 sections. In her shoes, which is a little summary of insight into her experience. In his word, Bible verses related to the topic, and in your life, practical suggestions for the reader to use in applying the element of faith described in everyday life. And these include things like love, courage, gentleness, prayer, forgiveness, hope, grace, obedience, trust, steadfastness, joy, truth, patience, mercy, commitment, and belief.
Fran, I love your title, okay? There's something about the imagery that comes up when you're reading it that really stops you in your tracks and creates so much intrigue. Talk to our listening audience here today. Why and how did you choose that title to be the representation for your book?
Well, in the Bible, clouds are always connected with God, our Creator. Mm-hmm. When the children of Israel wandered in the wilderness, God guided them with a cloud by day, which was a covering for them. And in the Psalms, it speaks of God riding on a cloud or using them for a footstool. In the book of Mark, we read that Jesus will come again in the clouds of heaven. And an interesting observation by Oswald Chambers reminds us that the dark clouds in our lives could be seen as accidents or difficulties, but the Spirit of God can use them as teachers to help us walk by faith.
Yeah.
And the other word that I used in the title is faith. And our faith walk begins when we believe in God's character and trust Him. According to the Bible, we will face trouble in our fallen world. Jesus said, in this world you will have tribulation, but take heart, I've overcome the world. And I like the way that Dwight L. Moody once described 3 kinds of faith. Struggling faith, which is like a man in deep water. Clinging faith, which is like a man hanging on to the side of the boat. And resting faith, which finds a man safely within the boat and able to reach out with a hand to help someone else. So the Faith Lifter section of Touching the Clouds is designed to help the reader strengthen his or her faith in daily life.
Mm-hmm. People, I'm telling you, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, fransandin.com are the places you got to go. All right, Touching the Clouds, True Stories to Strengthen Your Faith is the anchor that we're discussing today. But make sure to check out her 2 other books, See You Later, Jeffrey, followed by Hope on the Way, Devotions to Go. You know, Fran, as we start to transition and switch gears here, is there anything else that we haven't yet touched up on that you really want to make sure our listening audience is aware of?
Okay, I attended a conference in Orlando, Florida, and when I was returning back to Dallas, to the Fort Worth airport, I sat on the plane beside a gentleman who was the representative for Christian publishing in Korea. He had also attended the booksellers convention, and he asked about my books. I gave him a copy of some books that I'd written, and they were published and translated into Korean. Then, when my book, Touching the Clouds, was published, it became available in Korean also. So that was a real great surprise, something I never expected.
Love that. Fran, diving back into inspiration here, but who would you say inspired you to be an author?
Well, when I first felt God nudging me to write the book, I talked it over with my husband, and he encouraged me. And my pastor also felt I should write my story to help others.
Yeah.
But actually, I think my interest in writing began in a high school English class. My teacher wanted me to become an English teacher, but I had already decided to be a nurse. I didn't recognize it at the time, but I think the Lord was preparing me to eventually become an author. After my first book was published, I had the opportunity to visit my high school teacher who had moved to Louisiana. I thanked him for encouraging me and gave him a signed copy of the book.
You know, Fran, last question here. I'm just going to combine two, so it's a two-parter. But first and foremost, who would you say is your intended reader with the book? And what is the main message that you hope that they receive upon completing it?
Okay, I really hope that my book will make a difference in someone's life. And I can tell you about one person who I got feedback from. I was at the airport in the waiting lounge, and I met a lady named Peggy. And she said she just loved to read, and I had a copy of my book with me, so I just gave it to her. And she was browsing through it, and she started crying, and she said, "How did you know I needed this?" She said that she was a recovering drug addict herself, but her best friend's husband had committed suicide the night before, and she was so upset. She thanked me, and I never expected to see her again. But later, Peggy emailed me and told me that through reading the book, she realized that she needed something more in her life. And Peggy said that she and her friend had started attending a grief recovery group, and that her friend was feeling better, and that Peggy and her husband had decided to go to church. Mm-hmm. And she was so encouraged, and it helped me so much to know that the words that I'd used and the book that I'd written meant something special in someone's life.
Yeah.
And I would just say that whatever our need may be, God will reach down and touch our hearts if we reach out to Him. And a changed life is living proof of a vital faith in God.
People, I'm telling you, listen, this book is powerful. And I think where a lot of, or at least for me, right, as I mentioned, listen, there are nuances to this, and it is layered. But I love that final story that she was telling us about the woman that she met at the airport. And the reason why this book carries so much power is because regardless of your obstacle or challenge that you are facing, what this book represents and what it shows me is that you're not alone. There are resources out there. There are tools to be used and gained. And this book is one magnificent tool. But it reminds you that God never places anything in your path that you're not strong enough to overcome. It may not seem like that in the moment. And with His assistance and Him by your side, it's going to help you through so much. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, fransandin.com, a whole host of other online resellers. Head on over there today, pick up your copies, and get lost in it. Fran, this has been a true delight, an absolute pleasure. Thank you once again for being a guest on People of Distinction.
Thank you so much, Benji. I pray that my readers will be blessed.